Hey folks, how y'all doing? Jaime of JLD Instinctive Archery here on the Wingman 115 channel, coming at you with another video. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we're going to be talking about knives. So recently on the Wingman 115 channel, John and I did a video on 5 knives that make us happy. We had a lot of fun making that video, but I tell you what, I know for both of us, and I can speak to John about this, we had a tough time just trying to get 5 knives that make us happy because we got a lot of them. And so there were a lot of knives that didn't make the cut. For me, my Old Hickory, my modified Old Hickory is one of those knives. So the Old Hickory knife for an outdoor knife, it's a butcher knife for the outdoors, and then modifying it, that's nothing new. That's been around probably for over a decade and doing that. So this video it's not so much of a how-to in the do-it-yourself, but just shining a light on a great knife, all-American knife, it's been around for a while, and also how people have modified it through the years. So that's what we're going to be touching on. So for those that aren't aware, let's just kind of take a little step back. The Old Hickory butcher knife has its roots obviously in butchering animal processing game, but that knife style has also been used out for outdoor purposes for a long time. So again, going back when the whole bushcraft, woodscraft genre was really becoming popular, the Old Hickory knife was a popular budget intro beginner's knife. It really hit that area where people can take a knife and not spend a lot of money, and a lot of times they take, and this is the 7-inch blade version, they would pair it, because it doesn't come with a sheath, they would pair it with a K-bar fighting knife sheath. That's also for a 7-inch blade. So for under $20, you could easily get yourself a trusty knife with a good sheath combination. And again, this has been out for at least over a decade, that know-how. And playing around with that knife, learning how to sharpen that knife with that soft carbon steel, it was a great beginner knife. But there's a lot of pros out there that's all they rock, and yeah, for a good reason. Then we got into the modification of it. The modifications to that knife were for shorter blades. A big motivation was the Kephart knife design. So there's so many videos out there on YouTube that, again, go back 8 years, 10 years on taking that Old Hickory, the 7-inch blade, and changing the design, removing the handle scales, doing all kinds of stuff, making nice leather sheaths for it. So that's all, great do-it-yourself projects and ways to work on knives to learn how to do that. So I had followed suit, and a few years ago, probably about 8 years ago, I did get an Old Hickory, the 7-inch with the K-bar sheath as recommended. But one of the first problems that I ran into was that the sheath, the retention strap, was riding way too high on the handle, so it didn't seem very secure. Now I'm going to make sure John's putting in some photos of this process that I went through in my project, because what I decided to do was I had already a 5-inch blade K-bar sheath that didn't have a knife, so that's what prompted me to modify my Old Hickory to fit that sheath. So one of the things that I wanted to do was to challenge myself and only use hand tools. I say that because if you go and watch some of these modification videos, a lot of people are using power tools, which is great. Make your cuts, easy peasy. But I've always had a philosophy about using power tools on a knife, whether it's for shaping or sharpening. Whenever you introduce something of high speed, you better know what you're doing. You better be careful, because you can either A, ruin the temperament, or B, one little mistake on a rapidly moving saw, that's it, you're done. Whereas a hand tool, you could take your time, slowly shape it, and prevent any problems and error, as well as you're not going to risk messing up on the temperament. So if you're a new person, I would recommend hand tools in that regard, unless you got a watchful eye over someone. So that's what I did. I just used a file. It took me total time, it could have been 5 hours in this overall process that I'm going to explain, but we're just going to plow through this. Again, I'm just shining a light on this. But I did spread it out also over a couple of days. But in the photos that you'll see, I used a file to basically make 3 cuts take off the first couple of inches up in the front, and then create the angles for the overall profile that I did. Once that was done, and then I shaped the handle so it would seat properly into the sheath. I had the part of the handle the closest to the blade had a very abrupt blocked off area. So I had to create an angle on there so it would slip into the sheath, as well as reducing a little bit of the handle for the retention strap. So that required a little bit of carving. As far as the overall handle, I just did what I had to do in order for that blade, for the knife to fit into the sheath. And then I did run some sandpaper just to give it a little bit more of a good feel, contoured feel to it. Not so much a Coke bottle, but just smoothing it out, except for the show side. I wanted to leave that in its original state of being, showing that Old Hickory logo. And again, like I've mentioned, some people just go ahead and knock off the original scales and bolsters and add something a lot tougher if you're going to be batoning. Now, this is a cutting knife. This is a slicer. Even though some people have done some torture tests on it, for me, it's strictly going to be cutting and slicing. Yeah, I could do a little bit of light batoning, but for the heavier stuff, that's why I carry an S-wing hatchet or just a larger, more robust tool. But back to the knife, that was pretty much all I did with a file. Just took off the front end, shaped it, shaped the handle as I described, put some linseed oil, made it really nice with that coating of linseed oil, let it sit for about 24-hour period, probably more. And then I went to work on the edge. All I did, I kind of wanted to keep that simple. Again, some of the other people that have done the modifications to the edge profiling, they've done some very elaborate work and it looks great. I wanted to keep the rustic, and as they say in Japan, the wabi-sabi, some of the scarring of the work that I did. So I just did the reprofiling that I needed on a natural stone and then on my diamond stones and honed it, stropped it, and this thing is just wicked sharp. So it came out great and still retaining some of that original look, and it fits perfectly in this sheath, this K-bar sheath. The only thing I did for the sheath, I really didn't do much of a modification other than adding some jute with a snake knot. I got with the snake knot, you're looking at about 2 inches, which will render me anywhere from 8 to 9 inches all undone. And what that's for is for as you research this knife, or as y'all may well know, because of the high carbon steel, you can strike the spine to render sparks and then make a nice little bird's nest, rat's nest, and start a fire. Now, obviously, this would be your last-ditch effort. Carry your lighters, carry your ferro rods, carry your storm matches, but it just, paying homage to that traditional style of bushcraft, woodscraft. That's why that jute's on there. Now, I can already hear the keyboards cracking away. People saying, "Oh, neck knives! You better have a breakaway neck knife." Now, the reason why I'm wearing this as a neck knife, right now it's winter in Southern California, and I don't have a coat on, but I have this long tail shirt on. Normally when you wear a belt knife and you have a heavy coat on, that covers up the knife and you got to fumble around with it. So when I'm at camp and I have a heavy coat on, or something like this with long tails like this top on, it's nice to have a neck knife that's easily available. I get to it both hands, and when you're at camp, that's when you're cutting. That's when you're doing all your work with your knife. So it's easily available. So I'm not going to go climbing up a tree stand with this around my neck. I'm not going, on ops at night with this flopping around on my neck. This is just once I get to camp. Another way to wear this, again, if you got that heavy coat on, and maybe you want to take a light hike, one thing I could do is just drop it in the shirt. That way it's not flopping around, but it's there if I need it, on a nice light hike. Another thing, because it's a double fisherman's knot, I can extend that knot, and then all of a sudden I throw it over my shoulder. So that way it's not flopping around on my chest if I wanted to go on a light hike or a light scouting trip. And again, the knife is there, it's just kind of out of the way. Typically when I'm out scouting around, bow hunting, I got binoculars around my neck, so I wouldn't be wearing this per se. And also I have my survival canteen that I sling over my shoulder, but it's a viable option, for those that want to wear it, and especially with a big heavy coat. And I can get to it with both hands. In the warmer months, spring and summer, for those that have seen me on the Wingman 115 channel, know that I like a cross draw. So that's a belt knife, cross draw, both hands. But again, you introduce a heavy coat, Makes it a little bit more of a deal to try to get to it. But here, get into a car, sit down, lay down, and it's there with you. When I'm at camp, not just sitting around, but when it's time to go to bed, I like to actually have my knife on my chest, whether it's a neck knife or in this mode. That way, if you got La Llorona, Chupacabra trying to get at me, I'm going to get all Wolverine on them. But just something to think about, having your knife at you at all times. So that's pretty much it. Now, I do want to touch upon pricing. I said about going back about a decade, very affordable. This package system for the original Old Hickory butcher knife and a K-bar sheath. Before this video, last night, before making this video, beginning of 2022, here we are, I checked the prices and they've kind of gone up. So whereas before you could have gotten the knife and sheath, talking about the 7-inch blade versions, under $20, they've gone up a little bit, taking you more into that $25 range. It depends. You could probably find a bargain here and there. And I say that because just, I think it was 2 years ago, Ontario Knife Company, they seeing that everybody was modifying that 7-inch blade version to a 5-inch, they came out with a 5.5-inch hunting version of this Old Hickory knife. So that's out on the market. So you would think, oh great, now I don't have to go through all that trouble of modifying. True. And that price point you're looking at, I checked again online, somewhere around the $25 range, definitely under $30. So one can argue, well, if I don't want to go through all the trouble of, modifying a knife, I could just get a brand new one. And that is true, but part of the allure is making this knife your own when you do the modifications. Now you can buy that hunter version, that 5.5-inch version, and do some mods there. People are already doing that. They're taking off the scales, putting something more robust, maybe changing the blade design. My big thing, my pet peeve about that particular product, full disclosure, I haven't held it. I haven't been able to play with it. But from the pictures that I've seen online, the leather sheath, it looks nice. It's a pouch sheath, drop pouch sheath. When it's made in China, the knife's made in the USA, and Chinese leather sheath. If you look at the stitching, it's not the greatest. And I've had sheaths with similar stitching, especially the belt loop. I'm here to tell you, it doesn't last. And that's been my personal experience. Again, completely being honest, I haven't looked at or used that knife, that new Hunter Old Hickory, but just from looking at it, and all you leather workers out there, you will know. Whereas the K-bar sheath, how long's that been around? Let's see, go back to World War II, when the K-bar fighting knife was out there in the trenches. When I was in the Army as an infantryman from Fort Riley to Camp Casey, Korea, I had an old Camelus USMC fighting knife off of my LB, and infantry guys, I mean, from hot to cold weather, you can imagine, and it held up. So I'm not too worried about this sheath as a belt knife getting trashed, whereas that other sheath that I mentioned from the new Hunter Old Hickory, I don't know. But that's a good way to at least pick that blade up if you want to without doing the modifications. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully you guys will get something out of it, just showing a light on the Old Hickory gold American knife. I do got to kind of give a shout out to my buddy James from the Junkyard Fox channel. This knife always makes me think of him because he, on his channel, if you guys don't know the Junkyard Fox channel, James is out of El Paso, West Texas, and I'm originally from Dallas, Texas. So us Texas boys, we kind of got to stick together. Now, over in his part of Texas, it's very deserty, very dry, and unlike some of the heavy woods environments where you do need a heavier blade to power through logs, he is a big advocate and a fan of these thinner blades that can process game, process food, do light whittling. He's always been a big advocate of those kind of blades, and I have to agree in him in that regard. If you're not using your knife as a big heavy duty survival knife, this is all you need. And Mr. James, he's got a beautiful knife design of his own called the Snake Eater. Again, go check out his channel. Great guy. I had the chance to meet him out here. He took a trip out, and we got to hang out, and I got to actually handle his knife. But going about the thinner edges, I think as a knife community, we're all kind of coming back around from the thick blades to kind of going back to the thinner blades, thinner stocks. I was just a part of that community as well, where, you know, that train of thought. I had my big 1/4-inch blades when I was after the Army, I did join the Navy, and there we were issued the special boats, big old cold steel SRKs that have 3/16-inch blades, big old thick blades, but no, these are combat knives. They're getting torture tested, so they had their place. But when you're at camp processing food, processing game, thin blades are the way to go. So, don't overlook a nice thin edge knife, especially one that you can make your own. So I hope you guys found this video interesting, just shining a light on this, especially in the wintertime. Some people can't get out of the house. It's a great do-it-yourself project. So I thank you for your time and attention, and to steal James' line at the closing of his videos, go outside and get your boots dirty.